Good afternoon and welcome to today's STS-134 Post-Mission Management Team briefing. We have Leroy Kane, the chairman of that mission management team, with us today. We'll start off with his opening statements and then go on to questions from the reporters here in the newsroom and from the reporters on the phone bridge. Leroy?
Okay. Good afternoon. Thanks, Kelly. I think you all know that the spacewalk went really well, and the shuttle crew is, of course, in their sleep period now. The MMT, I don't have a lot to tell you about from the MMT simply because we didn't have a lot to talk about, so I'll just highlight what we spent most of our time on, which was a status from the damage assessment team, or as we call it, the DAT team. The team came in, I think you'll recall that we had one damage site that we were continuing to assess. And so they came in and gave us a status of that work, and it was a very thorough discussion in terms of the analysis that they have done and what they think they have yet to do before they would be able to clear the site. And ultimately, we determined that we're going to go do a focus inspection to get some more data on this particular site. And I have a couple of graphics to show you just to remind you of what we're talking about. The first graphic, if we can put the first graphic up. This is again the overview of the bottom of the orbiter and 7 sites that we were looking at initially. The only one that remains a yellow box is the one that's labeled 2-001. That's the one that's just behind the starboard main landing gear door and ahead of the ET disconnect door. The next chart tries to depict structurally what is underneath that site in that general vicinity. And so to orient you, you can see the arrows on the bottom left corner of the picture shows you that forward and inboard directions. So toward the back of the picture, you see an arrow pointed toward what's called the mid-body sidewall. That would be the side of the orbiter where the wing box connects to the side of the orbiter. The spars going across the picture, the STS-118 damage tile site is actually not in the actual location. It's depicted there simply to show you where it is relative to the STS-134 damage location in terms of inboard, outboard. So if we were going to put the 118 location on here in the correct location on this picture, it would be off to the lower left part of the picture. So it would be the mirror image along the spar on the very left-hand side of the picture. So as far as inboard, outboard is concerned, it's in the correct location. However, instead of being forward of the damage location on 134, it's that far aft of the damage location on 134, if that makes any sense. So this is just to give you a relative idea. We talked about the structure underneath those tiles and the fact that we're close to the wing box area, and you can kind of get an idea here how close that is. Just to give you some dimensional perspective here, the distance forward to aft between the 118 damage site location and the 134 location is approximately 14 inches. So that's each one of those spars in this cartoon here are half a foot apart roughly, and I can't tell you whether that's actual in terms of the engineering drawings, but this is just to give you an idea of structurally what's in this general location. So the next slide gives you an idea of what we do when we do the focused inspection. I think most of you are aware of this operation in general, but essentially we pick up the OBSS. In this case, we're going to pick it up with the station arm, and we're going to attach it to the shuttle's robotic arm, and then we'll lower it to the underside, over the wing, and to the underside of the vehicle, and then it maintains about a 7-foot distance from the actual surface of the underside of the vehicle, and it'll be located over the damage site. And then we'll take several images using the digital camera as well as taking data with the laser. So that gives you an idea of that general orientation. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you in terms of graphics and charts. The plan is that the focus inspection will start about the end of the crew's morning tomorrow, so they'll get up tonight around 10 p.m. local time, and by about 1:30 or so, they'll be into the focus inspection procedures. The pilot will be doing the shuttle arm operations, and 2 of the flight engineers will be doing the station robotic arm operations. And we will be doing, as I said, we'll be getting some digital camera shots, and we'll be getting some data with the laser, 3 of the IDC and 2 with the LCS. It's about a 2-hour task in total. It probably is actually not quite 2 hours, but we blocked it for 2 hours to go ahead and get the data that we want to with this one site. The SSRMS will be positioned, during the focus inspection, will be positioned on the other side of the orbiter, slightly away from the orbiter, and with a vantage point looking underneath and around so it'll have a vantage point looking toward the orbiter, but it'll be able to provide some camera views for clearance as we're putting the boom in the arm over the edge of the payload bay door in the wing area, and so it just provides us a little bit better information as we're doing the maneuvers of the arm. Also, the actual maneuvers are what we call OCAS maneuvers, so they're really programmed into the computer, and they're done automatically. So there's very little manual flying involved with this task as the team has it laid out. So that's, in a nutshell, that's the plan. The team felt like we needed to get a little bit more data to be able to get the analysis to the fidelity that we need to, and take out the conservatism. And in that sense, we'll be able to get a good sense for what we expect on entry, and see how much margin we have in this area once we get better fidelity on the imagery and get the LCS data. So everything else continues to go well on orbit. The team is gearing up for the next spacewalk, and in between now and then, we'll of course do focus inspection and a few other activities that we have in the crew's timeline for tomorrow. And then following that, we will do the Monday is after EVA 2 on Sunday. Monday is the Soyuz undock, which we talked about in the MMT and the IMMT yesterday. And then I think you're aware that the IMMT gave a go for undock this morning, and so that's all. That plan has been fully reviewed and is ready to go. So all in all, things are going very well, and that's pretty much a summary of the update I have for you today, so I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Leroy. And just for the folks here in the room, we do have a set of these charts printed out on the counter, and they'll be on the NASA website in the shuttle section of the NASA portal under News and Media Resources for those who are on the line. And we'll start here with Seth.
Thank you. Seth Bornstein, AP. Leroy, first, have you started contingency if you find something you don't like with the focused inspection for an EVA? Have you identified who it would be and when it would be?
No, we have not.
Okay. And in terms of looking at this, you said the pilot, it is Greg Johnson's going to do the shuttle arm, but it's really not much of his it's almost all programmed in, right?
Well, he'll do the program. He'll do the operations in terms of the procedures that are associated with the shuttle RMS system. He'll be responsible for all of those.
And the final one is, how many photos overall, with just the camera, not the laser, are you looking for? I think you said it, and I may have missed it. Just three photos. That's it.
We're looking for 3 images with the digital camera, and we're looking for 2 data takes with the LCS, the laser system.
Thank you.
Philip?
Philip Sloss with NASASpaceflight.com. I guess the simple question, which is everything else that you reviewed cleared for entry in terms of a ascent debris standpoint?
It is.
Okay.
We've cleared everything else. We cleared the other sites I showed you today again, and then yesterday. And even before we came here the first time to talk about tile damage, we had cleared the RCC, the wing leading edge. So we just have this one site remaining.
Okay, thanks. Mm-hmm. And then what's the plan, the execution plan in terms of reducing the data from the focus inspection for the team going forward after tomorrow morning?
Okay, so tomorrow morning, by the time the team comes in, they will have we'll have all the data on the ground, and they will be able to begin processing that data. It'll get processed by our the imagery and the laser experts first, and then they'll hand that off to the folks that need to do the structural and the thermal and the aerothermal analyses. It's important for the photo lab folks to be able to get the data so that we can get a more accurate dimensional assessment of this cavity, and that's really key to the overall structural and thermal assessment. And so it'll kind of go in that sequence, and there'll be some iteration between the various analyses as they go on, and I expect that in less than 24 hours we'll have their final answer. And just depending on you know how good the data is, and I expect it to be very good, frankly, given our experience with this, it's a good chance that it'd probably be less than 24 hours when we'll be ready to talk about what we think in terms of this site.
Thanks.
Mark?
Thanks, Mark Carreau for Aviation Week. I have a couple of questions which I think I can kind of roll together. I think the approach is going to give you a three-dimensional view that will tell you what's exposed and the depth of the tile damage, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Yes. In and of itself, it will not. We have to do some work with the data when we get it. The experts have to do some work with the data to actually come up with the equivalent of a three-dimensional body that represents the part of the cavity that's vacated.
And to the extent you're willing, has your sense since yesterday changed? And I guess I would characterize that as this is something you need to examine, but you're not seeing this as a hazard or a threat at this point.
You're correct, Mark. That hasn't changed. Again, we don't view this as there's nothing alarming here, and we're really not concerned. We're doing what we understand and know that we need to go do in these scenarios. This is one that we feel pretty confident that we're going to be able to clear it once we get some higher fidelity data. And since we don't positively know that for sure, we take it in this order. We go get the better data, do the higher fidelity, more accurate, less conservative analysis, get the answer, and from that answer determine if there's anything beyond that we need to do. And so, but our sense is, just as you said, that this is not one that ultimately we're going to be concerned about, and in all likelihood not have to do anything about after we get some better dimensional analysis and therefore thermal and structural analysis as a result of that we think we can clear the site.
Okay. No further questions right now here at the briefing room, so we'll go to the phone bridge. James Dean.
Thank you very much, James from Florida today. Leroy, could you explain a little bit further what you get out of a focus inspection that you don't get during flight day 2, just given that it's the same, system that's performing it?
Okay. Yeah, James, you'll recall on the flight day 2 inspections, that's really, we're inspecting the leading edge and the nose cap and the crew cabin areas. We don't really get this kind of data on the tile areas when we do the flight day 2 inspection. We get the best data on the tile areas when we do the rendezvous pitch maneuver, which is where these photographs came from that we've been working off of up until now.
I see. Thank you. And just wondering what more you would have to see to for it to become a greater concern. Obviously, I understand you don't expect that, but would it be essentially? And I know you were trying to get a 3D model, but would it be? Is there a depth that you could say that it would have to penetrate to for it to become more of a concern than it is now?
Well, James, just in general terms, for example, if we had a scenario where the damage went all the way to the SIP, went all the way to essentially the interface just between the tile bond and the core pond structure, that would be something that would need to be looked at in greater detail. If it was a clean a clean break all the way to the edge of a tile, for example, and you went all the way down the sidewall of the other tile down to the SIP or to the what's called the filler bar, that's yet a different scenario. If you had a combination of those two things, that's probably even yet a worse case than those other two previous ones. In all of those, it's really not about what we see in the photography or in the laser data per se. It's about when we take that data and then go plug that into the thermal and the structural analyses. So it won't be necessarily just as simple as looking at a picture, a higher fidelity, more close-up, more clear picture, if you will, and saying, yes, it's good, no, it's bad. It'll be a matter of taking that information and then translating that into the data that's necessary to run the models that do the thermal predictions and the structural predictions, that then from that we can back out the margin that we have for the structure that lies underneath this area, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And so while those two crew members you mentioned are, sorry about that, are at work on the inspection, basically everything else will be going on as normally timelined morning?
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, our next phone bridge reporter is Tariq Malik.
Thank you very much. It's Tariq Malik from space.com. And Leroy, I guess just to be clear on how the events will unfold tomorrow with the inspection, I know the crew had some time off that was scheduled. It sounds like they'll still get that. I just wanted to make sure that that would be the case. And I'm wondering if there's any tasks that maybe you hoped to achieve in terms of get-aheads with the transfer or anything that you're going to have to put off in order to perform the 2 hours of extra inspection. Thanks.
Yeah, Tariq, we talked a little bit about that yesterday, and essentially we have a plan that we've had as a placeholder on Flight Day 6. And in fact, this focus inspection is taking less time than the placeholder that we had in place. And so we're not losing any activities by doing this. We're not losing any off time. We're not losing any transfer time. And so it's actually a more benign situation than what we had already in the timeline as a placeholder.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds like that's all from Tariq. So last but not least, Bill Harwood.
Yeah, thanks, Leroy. Could you take a moment and just tell us how you did clear the Elevon? I guess part of this you've already answered, but I'm trying to make sure I understand how some things can get cleared without an inspection, whereas something like this one requires it. Thanks.
Okay, sure, Bill. The Elevon site was a damaged site that dimensionally was more benign than this one, and even though that's in an area that has the ability to see, and normally will see, a regime of higher heating than this particular area where we have this site of interest now. The damage area itself, in terms of the overall dimensions and the depth, was different in the sense that when you look at the overall thickness of that tile, which is quite a bit thicker back there on the Elevon, the analyses came back and said we had much more margin than we need to in that area. So it's essentially taking each one unto themselves in terms of they're all unique. The tile thicknesses are all different because they have different functions based on where they are. And so in the case of the Elevon, the damage is compared to the overall function and requirement for the tile to protect the underlying surface was such that we ended up with quite a bit more margin than we needed to, so we didn't have to do anything else with that site.
Anything else, Bill? Well, not hearing anything, we'll come back here to Houston. Any follow-up questions here in the briefing room? Okay. Well, with that, we'll wrap up the briefing. Thank you very much for coming. A reminder that those graphics are available on the NASA website at www.nasa.gov in the shuttle section. Coming up, a couple of programming notes. The space station crew scheduled to begin its sleep shift at 4:31 p.m. Central, 5:31 Eastern, and then we'll have our International Space Station Flight Director update from the Mission Control Console at 6:45 p.m. Central Time. Thanks for being here.